Profiles with Jason Patterson. In these moments, we reflect upon the extraordinary life journey of Spartanburg's Doug Lowe.
Coach, thank you so much for taking time to visit with us and reflect upon what's been an incredible basketball life.
Well, over half of my life has been spent in the gym, not in this particular building here in the new Spartanburg High School, but over half of my life was spent in the Red Dobson Gymnasium there on Dupree Drive at Spartanburg High School.
We sit on a floor now that bears your name. As you look back across the years in this game, how do you put into words what basketball has meant to you?
Well, it's been my whole life, really. It provided me with a job, provided me a way to go to college, to earn a scholarship and go to a college, and then to have a job that I did for 35 years at Spartanburg High School. And it's there with me. I miss the game at times, but I can always run over here and get a good seat.
Maybe not all the headaches and heartaches, but certainly some of those high mountaintop experiences.
Right. You don't, the losses stay with you. The wins, you go back and you reflect on those, but you remember the losses probably more than you do the wins.
Coach, let's go back to the earliest days of you picking up a basketball, falling in love with this game. Take us back there to those moments and what it was like for you and what attracted you first to the game of basketball.
I was fortunate. I went to Park Hills Elementary School, and we actually had a team in the 5th grade. You had a 5th grade team and you had a 6th grade team. So when I was in the 4th grade, the PE coach, Bob Radford, came to me and said, I want you to come and be on our 5th grade team. And to my knowledge, that had never been done before, where they would elevate a kid to play on that team. So that would be where I would say it traced back. And of course, we had a goal in our backyard, but to be on an organized team, to get a uniform, and hey, you're the only 4th grader that's on that team right there, kind of made you feel a little special, to be honest.
What were the values that you learned from the game in your youngest days that really carried on through? What did you learn through basketball that shaped you as a human being?
Well, I think the main thing would be hard work. That, everybody's going to be blessed with a certain amount of God-given talent, but then you've got to work at that craft or your trade right there. And I enjoyed so much being able to get into a gym as a 7th grader or 8th grader and close the doors, and I'm the only one in that gym, and it's just me and that basketball. That's kind of where I became a player and learned, and I was fortunate, and I had some great coaches going along through my time in elementary school, junior high, high school, and on into college.
In what way did those coaches rub off on you? What are the things that you look back across your career and you say, boy, I can really point back to my coaches, and that's probably the reason I was this way in that particular area?
Well, by myself being a high school coach, I reflect back to my high school coach, which was Fred Fraley. He played at Furman University. I wished I had been more like him, to be honest. Coach Fraley didn't get mad. One time he did kick the bench that we were sitting on, and other than that, I really cannot remember him ever getting a technical foul, and I'm sure he probably got one or two. But Coach Fraley was just a fine Christian man, and he instilled teamwork and hard work and fundamentals into us at 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade.
So I'm not sure we could say the same things in terms of technical fouls related to Coach Doug Lowe.
I probably got more my first season than Coach Fraley did in his career, but I was just really blessed there. I had a great junior high school coach in Don Ezel who would open the gym for me and let me work out. I started off my college career at Clemson. Tate's Lock recruited his first class, and I played on the last freshman team that was that college basketball had, and then I decided to transfer to Wofford, which had recruited me pretty heavy when I was in high school. And Gene Alexander was almost like a second father to me. Just a great man, and just had a wonderful experience at Wofford College.
Well, and you parlayed that into a Hall of Fame type career at Wofford College. When you think back on those days, what are the main memories that stand out? Is there a moment or two that has really stuck with you from your playing days as a Terrier?
I think back of the guys that I played with at Wofford. Danny Morrison, very successful, Carolina Panthers, people know of him. Billy Mitchell with Firehouse Subs And then I can name other guys that not that high profile, but are good, hardworking citizens. They take care of their wives, their family. They're never in any kind of trouble. And the Wofford experience for me was really a blessing.
When you're in those early years, whether it be middle school, as you talked about, high school, even on to college, there are those guys out in front of you that you look at, pattern your game after, want to try to mimic to some degree while still being yourself. Who are those individuals for you, Coach, that you looked on down the road and said, boy, I'd like to apply that to my game and to my life?
Tinker Boggs was a good high school player. He went on to Princeton on an academic scholarship, but Tinker Boggs had a flair about him that he played with. Not a hot dog, not fancy, but just he had a flair. He had that it factor right there. And I would watch him come out and warm up. I would, watch the things that he did. And I, kind of grew up thinking, man, if I could be Tinker Boggs, if I could be that good right there to start for Spartanburg, then, that would be the fulfillment of my dreams right there. One game in high school, I get 51 points in a game. And, part of that, Jason, was probably due to the fact that my high school coach, Fred Fraley, played in the game with Frank Selvey, in which he scored 100 points in a college game. I can remember our coach, we had the game pretty well in hand in the fourth quarter, and he told us, he said, unless you have a wide open layup, get the ball to Lowe, and we want him to see how many points he can get tonight. And to end up with 51, not 40, but 50 is kind of sets you apart. And I'll have people come up to me to this very day to say, hey, I remember that game in high school where you scored 51 points. Of course, some of my teammates said, well, yeah, you shot the ball every time. No wonder you scored a lot of points.
How much stock did it give you? How much validation did it provide when you were coaching those young athletes, them knowing you had roamed the floor and made that type of impact in the heat of the moment?
Well, I think it certainly helped me have instant credibility. I mean, when I walked onto my job at Spartanburg High School, I was 22 years old. I was coaching JV basketball. And at that time, of course, I'm 22 years old, right out of college, and had success in college as, an all-state player, all-conference player. That gave me an advantage, I think, when I walked in there at Spartanburg High School, and my players could see, well, hey, that guy's pretty good. That guy knows what he's talking about. Not only can he tell us, he can show us right there. And I think that helped me immensely right there.
Before we get to the glory that you ended up returning to Spartan High as the head basketball coach here, let's finish up on your playing days just a little bit. Think across a guy or two that you played against that left an indelible mark on you, the way they performed off the other bench, on the other end of the floor. Who are the guys that really made a mark on you as an opponent?
Clyde Mays was 6'7", 225, 30 pounds. Looked like he was cut out of a granite stone. People still talk about Lowe. I remember you driving in there and Mays blocking your shot to half court. And I said, yeah, but I wasn't the only one that he sent to half court. When I took the court as a junior and a senior, then I felt like I was the best player on the court. Now, that didn't work out too well with Clyde Mays and Wade Hampton because they did beat us. But he was really the guy I was thinking of, the most dominating, awesome player that I played against in high school was Clyde Mays.
But the confidence has to be there.
Okay.
And not only the confidence, but also the desire to work and get better. So much of that confidence comes from that work ethic you talked about.
Right. And I remember a couple of things. One, when I was going into high school, it was rare that a 10th grader was on the varsity. I remember one of the kids in our neighborhood, older kid than me, was, talking about, well, you're going to Spartan High next year, and, you did real good at Jenkins Junior High School. He said, y'all will have a good JV team. And I didn't say anything. I just went, yeah. And, I'm thinking to myself, I ain't playing on no dang JV team. I'm going to be on the varsity. So I don't think confidence was ever lacking for me when I played high school and college. And fortunately, I was quick. I mean, that's one of the God-given talents that I had. I was quick. It didn't matter who we played against. I was usually the quickest player on the court. And quickness in basketball does pretty well. Quickness in my golf game, it doesn't do much.
Doesn't help
do
out
much
that
for
much.
my golf game. But quickness with basketball, that's a big asset.
If you had the opportunity to go back and give one piece of advice to your playing self, to your young self, what would you say to that version of Doug Lowe?
I might say pass the ball more, to be honest. But just treasure the moment. Enjoy it. Because when that uniform comes off for the last time, yeah, you can go in the church league, You can play an industrial league right there. But it ain't the same. It ain't the same of having fans in the stand, your classmates and people from the community, and to watch you play and to compete on a high level like that. I would say treasure every time that you put that uniform on. When a kid comes back to you and says, Coach, if it hadn't been for you, I don't know where my life would have ended up. I mean, that's just beyond anything you could get in a paycheck or anything. It just makes you feel so good to know that you had a part in changing somebody's life.
Coach, the journey brings you right back here to Spartanburg. We talked about coming back to Wofford from Clemson, but how exactly did it transpire for you to become the head coach at your alma mater?
Kind of a crazy way that I ended up here, to be honest, Jason. It's spring, basketball's over. I'm an economics major at Wofford College, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm going to go into the banking. I did think about and interviewed with Spartan Food System back then. That was the Hardee's, Quincy's. It's funny, my interim program at Wofford, in the month of January, you take one class. And I had written up an independent interim, which was coaching high school basketball. And Bill Henson, who was the coach at Spartanburg High School, was my mentor, the person that approved it and said, yes, I'll work with you. I submitted my plan, and I'm going to help them practice. I'll be able to sit on the bench with them during games. I can show them what I had learned. We talked about Clemson and the defensive stuff that was just coming in at the time, that I could, work with them like that. And I found that I had a, good rapport, good relationship with the players, and I liked the teaching part of it. From that interim project at Wofford, then I ended up being hired at Spartanburg as the JV basketball coach. And I coached JV basketball for 4 years. And then at 4 years was over, the head job came open. Fortunately, Joe Delaney was our principal, Bill Carr was the athletic director, and they took a chance on a 26-year-old kid with 4 years of JV experience and hired me to be the basketball coach at Spartanburg High School.
And looking back, you realize what a miracle to some degree that was, that you went ahead and received the job, even though looking forward at the time, it made sense. You look back on it now, and it really was quite the window opening up for you.
I realized, I said, hey, this is just too good to be true. And, I've played on this court, and now I'm going to coach in the same building. And it used to be very uncommon, and teams would celebrate and almost want to cut the nets down if they beat Spartanburg High School. That goes back to the 60s, and even during the time when I played, it was rare that you beat Spartanburg High School. And I remember making a comment, hey, it's gotten to the point now, it's commonplace. Teams don't celebrate when they beat us anymore. They expect to beat us. And I said, I hope I can bring that back to the point where we're going to be the team that they point to on the schedule and say, we got to beat Spartanburg.
What was your philosophy and what was your approach to that end? What was the game plan you put in place in order to make that dream a reality?
I knew I wanted to play a fast tempo. I knew we wanted to change defenses, and I think I got that from watching North Carolina, the way they would change defense. I valued shot selection, and people would say, well, that's rare coming from you, shot selection, because you never met a shot you didn't like. But shot selection was important. We were going to play defense, okay? We're going to run, and at the end of the game, we're going to be able to hold the ball and get to the free throw line and protect the lead. When that game got down to the 3-minute mark, okay, and we holler out, Carolina, we're going to win that ball game. That's a confidence factor, and we won a lot of close games, and I think our guys bought into that and believed it right there.
Was there a moment where you realized, because obviously coaching is a completely different animal from playing, was there a moment where you realized that system is beginning to be in place and I think this is actually going to work out?
Yeah, we were fortunate in that we got off to a great start my first year. I mean, we won our first, I think, 8 or 9 games right there. So right out of the bat, I'm kind of validated as, this is a good choice. This guy knows what he's doing. So in my, I don't know, 3rd, 4th game, we go to Burns, and we're playing against, in my mind, a legend in Harold McManus. And we were over there, and not only did we win, we beat them good. We beat them good. And, I'm thinking, hey, what we're doing is right. It's working. And I also learned a valuable lesson that after Christmas, we played Burns in the rematch at our place. Having already beat them one time, I'm thinking, okay, all we got to do, hey, we beat them first time. They're not real good this year. We're at home, and they came over there and just handed our fannies to us on a silver platter. And I learned right then, you never underestimate a team. Doesn't matter if you've beat them before, where they are, you respect them. And I think I learned that lesson real quick right there. And we had a good year. We didn't win the region. We got into the playoffs, which Spartanburg hadn't made the last couple of years. I had a 10th grade point guard by the name of Lee Sarter, who would later, people would know that name, that he coached Zion Williamson at Spartanburg Day School. And, that's, people say, who's your best players you ever had? Well, I don't ever say who I think was our best player, because that's not fair to players from one kind of generation to another. But it's say, who's your best point guard you ever had? It doesn't take long to name 2 or 3 guys, and Lee Sarter is always at the top. So I almost had a coach on the floor for the time I started.
What has that meant to you, those who have not only excelled on the basketball floor under your tutelage with your fingerprints on their life, but those who also have put together pretty impressive investments in their own lives?
When a kid comes back to you and says, Coach, if it hadn't been for you, I don't know where my life would have ended up. I mean, that's just beyond anything you could get in a paycheck or anything. And to have kids saying, Coach, you were hard on us, but I tell you what, some of the times when times are tough, I think back to the way you treated us, and it just makes you feel so good to know that you had a part in changing somebody's life right there. In high school, those are important years right there, and to have a kid say, Coach, you made a big difference in my life. And we worked hard, but we had fun.
That's being a part of something bigger than yourself.
That's right. That's right. And the good Lord was shining on Spartanburg High School that night, and the clock's going 3, 2. Tony catches it, steps right into the shot, and nothing but net right there. Our players come off the bench, just celebrating, and there's no doubt that shot was good right there.
In an instant, you're a state champion.
We're state champions. There's nothing like beating your rival, because you get to have that bragging right, for the rest of the year, And Dorman was always a tough game for us. It didn't matter what the records were. I know that sounds like cliche with a coach, you throw it out, but that's certainly true when you play your rival. And Dorman, the first couple of years, Dorman was really good. They had Anthony Jenkins is one name that people would recognize that went to Clemson. And it took us, first 2 seasons, we couldn't beat Dorman. They handled us, and we just look forward to the time to say, we're gonna be able to beat them. Dorman, playing them, didn't matter if it was home or away. The gym was full, and they were tough. We had some great battles and great games with them. And when you take the court, and I don't want to leave anybody out of this, and I know by naming a few names that I will, but when you played a Harold McManus team at Burns, a Mark Freese team at Dorman, a Thomas Ryan team at Dorman, a Mark Huff team at Gaffney. And then that's not mentioning our nemesis in the playoffs for so many years, Irmo, with Tim Whipple. When you played those people right there, if they beat you, you walked off the court and you knew you had been beaten by a talented team, but an outstanding coach, that they're going to be well prepared.
And the coaching camaraderie that developed with so many of those you battled with. Those are the environments you want to be in, and it forges friendships that may be unlikely in the minds of a lot of folks watching those games.
Right, and people may say, you're telling a lie, but I don't ever remember having a crossword with Mark Huff or Mark Freese, Thomas Ryan, Tim Whipple. Probably some of the other coaches I might have had a crossword, but those guys right there, you know that they're going to be prepared. You know that you've got to have your team prepared, and if you beat them, you feel good about it. And then if they beat you, you say, well, let's go. We can go back to the drawing board and look at film, but we got beat by a team that is well coached right there.
What do you think they would say about a Doug Lowe coach team? If I could sit those gentlemen down right here and say to them, what's the mark of a Doug Lowe basketball team? What do you think their response would be?
They're going to be competitive. They're going to play hard. We're not going to play any harder than a Doug Lowe team. We might play as hard, but you're not going to play any harder than his teams. And every time out, we're not going to shoot it well. We're going to have breakdowns on defense, but you're not going to outwork us. You're not going to play any harder than we are. And I would like to think that the coach might say, if it gets down to the last 2 or 3 minutes of a game and it's close, we're in trouble. Because Coach Lowe knows what he's doing over there on that bench. And you would like to think that. And it could be just the opposite. They might have been thinking, hey, if we get them in a close game, Lowe will screw it up at the end. So
you had a couple of pretty good teams yourself in terms of state championships. You played for the state championship on more than one occasion. Let's go back to those two very close ones that you played in. You talked about the other one, but let's go back to the two very close games. One that you ended up on the top side of, one that didn't quite go your way, that lives in the lore of South Carolina basketball history. Walk us through those two state championships particularly.
I'll go back a minute. In '87, we lost to Lower Richland. And a team, we could have played them 20 times and never got within 20 points. Just as I said, maybe the best team to ever play in this state. 2 years later, my guys were seniors. Sidney Thomas, great player for us right there. Brad Painter. Those were our two leading scorers and probably our two best players that year. They went on to play in college. So we're playing in '89 in the state championship game. We're playing Eau Claire, who was coached by a pretty good guy by the name of George Glimp. George Glimp's a legendary coach in this state, and Eau Claire was really good. They were good, and we played kind of down to the wire against them. And I remember Coach Glimp talking to me before the game, and he had not won a state championship, even though, like I said, he's a legendary coach in this state. And I remember him telling me before the game, he said, well, one of us is going to get this monkey off our back about winning a state championship. And as it turned out, they were the better team that night. We didn't play well enough. Some of my players would still talk about, Coach, man, if I'd have played better that game, we'd have beat them. But to their credit, Eau Claire was the better team that night. So that's in '89, and then we have a, 10, 12-year period to 2002 when we had a really good team. Jamal Brown was 6'7" center for us, and Donald Stevenson, I mentioned. Tony Ballinger, who's one of the assistant coaches over here now at Spartanburg High School, was our point guard that year. And had a kid, Blake Genoble, just a hard-working kid inside right there. And had a pretty good guy off the football team right there, Brandon Sims, as an athlete. And we weren't deep, but those starting five, we were pretty good. And so we get to the finals, and we're playing Richland Northeast, and they were good. They had 2 6'7" players inside. And to be honest, if we had played them in a series, best of 5, best of 7, I don't know that they weren't the better team. But on that particular night, we played high school games, 32 minutes. For 30 minutes, we played as good as we could play. We played as good as we could play. Jamal Brown did what he did all year. He rebounded and scored. Donald Stevenson was the best player on the court that night. Brandon Sims, who was the quarterback in the state championship football game for Coach Davis that they won, okay? And now he's on the hardwood court, and Brandon Sims was an athlete, averaged a grand total of 5 points during the year. But what I remember in that game, he scored 15 points. So if he doesn't score 15 points, if he scores his 5, there's no way we win. But he had just had a tremendous game for him. And that game, people talk about, the game in 2008 that we lost where they said the shot was not good. Well, in this case right here, the game goes to the final seconds and it's tied. We were up about 8 points with 2 minutes to go, and they end up tying us. And we probably should have been a little more patient, a little more, using our Carolina stall game and all, but we didn't. And anyway, so the game gets tied, and now, it's looking like we're going to go to overtime. And as a coach, you're thinking, they got all the momentum right now. If this game's over to overtime, we're in trouble. Sims had fouled out, so there again. So it goes to, we call timeout with about, 8 seconds to go. And we were smart enough to hold it for the last shot. We weren't going to give them the last shot. And our kids, being smart like they were, they ran the play to perfection. We get a good screen. Donald comes off that screen, and now he's going to take a 18-footer, not a three-pointer. He's got a good open look right there, and he missed it terribly. And it hit like the bottom of the rim, and the good Lord was shining on Spartanburg High School that night because one of our players kind of deflected it, and Tony Ballinger, who threw it in bounds, now his job was to get to the elbow, and he's there at the elbow, and that ball was like it had been passed to him in a passing drill. And the clock's going 3, 2. Tony catches it, steps right into the shot, and nothing but net right there. Our players come off the bench, just celebrating, and there's no doubt that shot was good right there. And
in an instant, you're a state champion.
We're state champions. The hard work that we put in, and our players, Jason, to be honest, I know they were happy for themselves, but they were happy for me. And, a couple of them said, Coach, this is for you. And
means the world.
Oh, God. I mean, just still thinking back on that moment and going into the locker room. And I'd been coaching then, I guess, 25 years or so. And, it finally came. And, it wasn't, for me, in a way, I guess it was, the monkey off your back that people would say, hey, you guys have been successful. You're winning 20 games, 25, but you never won that championship. And I'd say to this day, whether we had ever won the championship, I don't think I didn't think I needed that to validate me as being a pretty good coach. Not the greatest coach ever. A lot of coaches better than me. And I think of the great coaches that I coached against at Union High School, Joe Pitt, they never won a state championship. There's so many, it is hard to get there. I think people underestimate that, and they look at what Dorman has done the last, winning 4 in a row. They look at what Gaffney did, winning 3 in a row. They look at maybe some of the Great Falls teams with John Smith, where they're winning 10 championships. But I'm telling you, you've got to be lucky to get there.
Doesn't change who you are, but it's certainly a moment to treasure.
Oh, certainly. I mean, I've got a big ring that I never wear now, but I always thought, I was never jealous of our football team. Those guys that coach football, Doc Davis and Steve Linder, who was my first assistant coach.
Great friends of yours.
Great friends.
Incredible camaraderie here.
I celebrated when they won state championships. It was like I had won one. And Ray Wilson, our athletic director, I remember him telling me one year when they won at Clemson, and he put his arm around me and he said, "You're going to get one of these."
And
I always remembered that.
And you did.
And we did.
When generations do come and they glare down out of these stands onto this floor and see this name, what do you hope they remember about Doug Lowe?
We were going to play the game hard, and then at the end of that game, we're going to shake your hands and say, hey, we'll see you next time.
Let's talk about the state championship game that did not work out your direction. You had so many good memories in state championship battles and throughout your career, but that one game sticks in a lot of folks' mind because of the drama at the end. You won one with high drama. You ended up on the short end of one with high drama. Take us back to that day and the way everything transpired with one of the better teams you ever carried to the state title.
Right. That was a team that, probably overachieved a little bit. We were not, in mid-season, we were not a playoff team. We kind of put it together in the last month of the season. We had to win our last game of the year at home against Dorman to even make the playoffs. And that's no easy task when you've got to beat your rival right there, and we had beaten them at their place in the first game. But we're going to play a Summerville team who had A.J. Green, who is receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. People remember that name. And what people would not know is he was equally as good a basketball player. A.J. Green could have played in the ACC. He could have played in the Southeastern Conference. He could have played anywhere he wanted to. He was that good. So we're playing a Summerville team that we knew was good. They had earned their way there. They probably had lost 1 or 2 games that year. And we're in the state championship game against Summerville. And the game was close throughout. It wasn't a particular good game. X and O's, I mean, it was just a low-scoring game. Probably, to be honest, an ugly-looking game.
But from a fan standpoint, incredibly entertaining.
But from a fan standpoint, it was close throughout. A.J. Green got off to a tremendous start, and we had to go to a box and one to try to shut him down. He had like 16 points, I think, in the first quarter, and then scores only 8 or 10 the rest of the way. So that worked. But it gets to the end of the game, and the game goes back and forth in the last 2 minutes. I mean, just they're scoring, we're scoring. We hit a 3 to take the lead and go up by 2, I believe it was. And we had kind of gotten behind 4 or 5 points, and our half-court trap had kind of got us back in the game to get ahead. And we scored to go up, and then we said, okay, we're going to stay in that half-court trap. We had been in it, so there wasn't any, we weren't going to change. So we go to a half-court trap, and we extended a little bit too far. They caught it and threw behind us, score, got fouled, and now they're in the lead. They're on the free throw line with 2-point lead, and they're shooting a two-shot foul. And you know, you're thinking in your mind, there's 1.5 seconds to go, 1.5, and I actually are thinking to myself, okay, he's gonna make one. At least he's gonna make one. Well, he missed the first one. They did not put anybody on the free throw line, so we're going to get the rebound, and I'm thinking, okay, we're going to get a throw. We're going to get a throw from three-quarter court. Well, Zacharian Robinson, who was an outstanding high school guard, Z-Man was his nickname, he gets the rebound and takes 2 dribbles, okay, 1.5 seconds. Now, they were 2 quick dribbles, but he actually, from three-quarter court, shot the ball. He didn't throw it. He shot it. And I'm seeing it, and all of a sudden, the ball has gone through the basket. Our players are celebrating. Their players, it looked like a sniper had shot every one of them. They have hit the floor because they realized what I was realizing. That's a 3. We're down 2. We've just won the state championship. To be honest, I did not have a good feeling that it was going to turn out in our favor, because I did see that the official had waved it off. But the other 2 officials, I'm not sure that they knew one way or the other. So in their defense, they've got to make that call in a split second. They talked about it. They do not have instant replay. They're not going to go to a monitor and look at it. So they're talking, and all they can do is, you know, I'm assuming, well, what do you think? And the one guy's going to say, I'm not sure. The other guy says, I don't have an idea. I'm not sure. And the other guy said, I called it no good. I'm sticking with it.
Just like the shot that was counted,
right?
Folks are still talking about it.
They still talk about it.
To this very moment, and they will.
They still talk about it, and it, you know, it would have been a shot that would have been on SportsCenter every year. You know, we do the broadcasting of the state championship games, and you know that would have, you know, probably been shown as a replay. And I think one time you asked me, there was a shot at the end of a quarter, and the officials have to determine, you know, was that shot good? And you asked me, do you think that shot was good? And I remember telling you, I'm probably the last person in this building that you should ask that question to.
That's a great way to bring that segment to a close. This, in many ways, when you talk about these relationships, Coach, this has been your family for a lifetime.
It has been. You're absolutely right. And Jason, I was fortunate to grow up in a Christian home with mom and dad and 2 brothers, and I valued that family relationship. And here at Spartanburg High School, that's what I wanted our guys to have.
They honored your approach. They honored your investments by putting your name on this floor, the new home of the Spartanburg Viking. For generations to come, this will be the new home of the Spartanburg Vikings, and it'll be Doug Lowe Court. When generations do come and they glare down out of these stands onto this floor and see this name, what do you hope they remember about Doug Lowe?
That he came to work every day and he did his job. He coached the right way. We were going to play hard. We were never going to play dirty, but we were going to play the game hard. And then at the end of that game, we're going to shake your hands and say, hey, we'll see you next time. Enjoyed it. And I hope that the players that played for me will look back and say, this is the most fun thing that I did as a high school. You know, I think back of the story of Lou Gehrig. I've seen that speech at Yankee Stadium so many times. And, you know, he said that, hey, you know, I've been given a bad break. I think he was 37 years old or 32 or something like that. And, you know, he was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. And, you know, he stood in front with that microphone and said, today I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. And in a lot of ways, I feel that way because I was able to coach at a school that I went to school with as a student. I coached here, and I just felt like I had so many blessings in my coaching career. And the blessing that I had was that I got to coach so many great young men. Sometimes they'll coach, you know, we were the lucky ones. And I say, no, you weren't. I'm the lucky one. I got to coach you.
Respect the game. Respect yourself. Do it the right way. Thank you for your time, my friend.
Thank you. Always
appreciate you, Coach.
Always a pleasure.